It was a really beautiful day. With a group of Jesuit friends, we climbed to the top of the mountain. It was the first time for me to be so high up there, and in the clear sunny weather we could see a magnificent panorama with the surrounding peaks. I was overcome by the beauty, the fresh air, the majesty of the scenery. So I sat down on the rocks to take it all in. Oh, how I wanted that moment to never end, to experience that beauty, that quiet, that wonderfulness forever. But we had barely been there for half an hour or so when our guide ruined the whole experience for me. "Time to start on our way back," he said. "We have to get down from the mountain now." I angrily protested loudly. "Oh, no! How? How can this be? We have just arrived after such a hard and difficult climb up. We must stay longer." The guide came up to me. He pointed his finger to a little cloud, a grey cloud there over the horizon. "If we do not leave now," he said, "that cloud will become a violent storm that will prevent us from reaching back home in time." I had to resign myself and grudgingly start walking down. This time, the destination was the valley below. In today's readings, we have two scenes, both of them happening on a mountain. The first is the story of Abraham with his son Isaac climbing to offer a sacrifice to God. The second is Mount Tabor, where Jesus climbed with his closest disciples. In the stories, we see a revelation taking place. In the first, Abraham discovers that he is to sacrifice his beloved son Isaac. In the second, Jesus, flanked by Moses and Elijah, reveals his radiant beauty to his disciples. In the first, the pain of Abraham, ordered by God to sacrifice his son, and the resigned pain of submission on the part of his son Isaac. In the second, the glory of God's own Son, accompanied by Moses and Elijah right in the midst of the law and the prophets. God's own voice is heard expressing his tender love for his Son Jesus. "This is my beloved Son. Listen to him." In the first, we see how the horrible pain of a loving father is transformed into the joy of seeing his son spared at the last moment from what seemed to be a cruel God. In the second, we see how the enchanting beauty of a glorious Jesus makes Peter beg the story to stop there. "Let us make 3 tents," exactly the feeling I had at the top of the beautiful mountain. Of course, for Peter this meant, let us make our home here. Let this be the end of the journey. Let us make this a permanent show for us to admire and enjoy. But as often, Peter failed to understand anything of what was happening. The lights went off, the show ended, and Jesus found himself again alone, facing the harsh reality of his mission. And I may add, the misunderstanding of his disciples. He knew that, like Isaac, he himself was to be the victim to be sacrificed. And the glorious vision was just a brief revelation of the new life Jesus was to win for himself and for us through his death. It was the brief experience of the beauty of being on the mountaintop with Jesus for the disciples. But before Jesus could get there, he still had to face and undergo the cruel passion and death on the cross, the darkness of the valley of rejection, pain, and death. As the passion approached, Jesus needed to hear yet once more. He needed to hear the Father repeat what he had already proclaimed at the moment of Jesus' baptism. This is my beloved Son. It is this love that gave Jesus the strength to face the darkness of the valley. And knowing how precious he was for the Father, would give him the strength to face the oncoming torture and death. No, there is no mountaintop without a valley. There is no glory without sacrifice. There is no life without death. There is no gain without pain. God was not asking Abraham to sacrifice his son just to satisfy some kind of morbid, violent, cruel instinct in God. God never asks anyone to pay him a price for anything he gives. Life and joy are not obtained through some sort of cruel, hard, and harsh bargain. You have to suffer so that you will enjoy something afterwards. No, no, no. Happiness can never be earned or bought. It can only be received. God was not asking Abraham to sacrifice his son. He was asking him to give up any temptation to regard his son as his own property or right. And remember, a son means a long and everlasting life for the Father after his death. God was asking Abraham to kill his own possessiveness and set his son free to be himself, not just the source of his own hope or the prolongation of his own life. He wanted Abraham to acknowledge the preciousness of Isaac for his own sake. This is my beloved son. However, what was too cruel to contemplate in Abraham's story, the death of his own son, was to become a reality in Jesus. God's own son who accepted to die for a reason. And this reason was not to appease or satisfy an angry father. The reason was that his brothers, his sisters, that is all of us, needed to be freed from our own self-centered possessiveness, selfishness, and to restore us to our original beauty and glory. Jesus had to go down to the dark valley of our own misery. To save us from ourselves, he had to take upon himself our self-destructive attachment to our own sin. To restore us to our original beauty and glory, Jesus had to go down to the dark valley of our own misery. To save us from ourselves, he had to take upon himself our self-destructive attachment to sin. Which reminds me of Martin Luther King's famous speech in 1963. "I have a dream today," said Martin Luther. "I have a dream that one day every valley shall be exalted, every hill and mountain shall be made low, the rough places will be made plain, the crooked places will be made straight. and the glory of the Lord shall be revealed, and all flesh shall see it together. What a dream! This is the same dream that Jesus had. To make this dream a reality, he needed to climb down from the mountain of the Transfiguration. He needed to measure the deepest depths of the valley of human wickedness, evil, and misery. Shortly after this speech, Martin Luther King was silenced by a bullet. Like and with Jesus, he had to pay the highest price to make his dream come true. No wonder that Jesus ordered his disciples to shut up and not say a word about this new vision of freedom before the Son of Man will have freely sacrificed himself and died for us on the cross. Words by themselves will never change a thing in our lives. They will never bring us to the promised transfiguration we dream of. Real and lasting change requires us to climb down from our comfortable mountaintops, to touch the deepest and dark depths of the valleys of life, to embrace our common poverty and painful misery out of love for one another. Only then can we rise up with Jesus to discover our own transfiguration into the real, radiant beauty for which we all have been created by our loving and ever faithful Father in heaven. There can be no glorious mountaintop which does not rise from a dark and deep valley. God bless you and thank you.